Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you so much to Dave as well for hosting this amazing festival and for getting everyone out today. So my name is Gabriel Harrison. I am a cultivator. I work with my partner and fiance Emma Regal on our farm, Gowin Valley Farms. We're up in Rocky Face, Georgia, which is kind of close to Dalton, Georgia, if you're familiar. It's up 75 north, exit 336. So this is a shot of our farm here. Traditionally, our farm was a Tennessee walking horse farm. But we have retrofitted our Tennessee walking horse barn and show stables into a mushroom production facility. We have two separate laboratories there. One is mainly for creating grain spawn, and the other is for working with sawdust cultures as well. So this is Emma's grandparents, Jim and Bobby here. They bred and raised Tennessee walking horses on the farm starting in 1962 when our farm opened. Emma's grandmother, Bobby, was the president of the Tennessee Walking Horse Association, and her grandfather was an entrepreneur who did different carpet ovens and other machinery fabrication. Emma grew up on the farm. She spent a lot of time out there as a kid with her grandparents, doing everything from fishing, exploring, finding mushrooms, and both of her grandparents were very into horticulture and grew a lot of different vegetables and fruits as well. So we have a lot of their original fruits that they planted in the 60s and 70s, things like muscadine grapes, blueberries, and a lot of other vegetable crops as well. At the beginning of the pandemic, Emma and I decided to leave our jobs in Atlanta. Both Emma and I worked in marketing. I worked at the Atlanta Tech Village in Buckhead and was a product development manager for a company that did VR software. And Emma was a marketer for a company that unfortunately went under during the beginning of the pandemic, which was a push for us to move up to the farm and be with her grandfather, who was kind of getting a little bit older and weaker in health. And we started taking over his vegetable gardens and managing the farm with him helping us as well. So once we first got started, before we ever grew mushrooms, we would cultivate vegetables. We had an outdoor vegetable garden, and we would sell contactless delivery vegetable boxes to the local community in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is closest to us. We slowly but surely started exploring the land as we were cultivating vegetables, and we started finding golden chanterelle mushrooms. And we took a large portion of these golden chanterelles to Emma's grandfather, who knew what they were and was like, you should look into the market of these mushrooms. There might be something there for you to work with restaurants or chefs. He was familiar with them, and that's sort of what got us interested in finding mushrooms and selling mushrooms to the community. So our first few batches of chanterelles that we found are these mushrooms here, if you're unfamiliar. They can't be cultivated. They're a mycorrhizal fungi, so they have to have a relationship with living trees and soil. But for the most part, no one has ever been able to successfully cultivate them at scale. So we knew that it was a finite resource, not something that was going to be around forever from the Googling that we had done at the time. And we wanted to try and learn a little bit more. So we started acquiring spawn and substrate bags from commercial providers and started growing our own grow kits and growing mushrooms in logs from things that we had read on the internet. So at first we started out with about 400 logs that were all placed in a nice shaded area next to our house, and we took extensive data on all of those logs, so everything from the time that we inoculated them to seeing when the logs had started to pin, and we organized them by species. And unfortunately, once the tree cover fell, all of the leaves fell when it became wintertime, all of those logs were directly in the sunshine. So it was a pretty quick learning curve for us to realize we had to move all 400 logs from the non-shaded area into the shade and somewhere that we could easily water them. So that's what we did. And probably about 2 or 3 months after we started all of these logs, a friend had gotten in touch with us about a grant that was being hosted by Kennesaw State University. It was the 2021 Specialty Crops Block Grant through Kennesaw State and Cornell. And we reached out to the director of the grant, Christopher Corneliuson, Dr. Chris Corneliuson at KSU. And Chris, the next day, hopped on a Zoom call with us and invited us to be the fourth and final partner on the grant, which we were very, very fortunate to be in the mix with some of the other growers. A lot of the other growers that were a part of this grant were much larger producers and had a ton of experience cultivating mushrooms indoors. We then became certified foragers here through Mushroom Mountain. We took the toxicology course to be able to sell wild mushrooms to chefs. And that summer we started selling the golden chain shells to chefs in our local community. And a lot of those chefs that we first started working with are actually chefs that we still work with and sell mushrooms to today, which is really cool. So this is a little bit of information about mushroom imports. Mushroom imports have seen significant increase since 2016, around 2.3% each year. There are majority of the mushrooms produced in America are produced in Pennsylvania. The domestic mushroom market in Pennsylvania encompasses about 85% of all domestic mushrooms in the U.S., and it's within a 5 to 6 mile square radius, which is really interesting. There's not a great reason as to why more mushrooms cannot be produced in other states. It just so happens that Pennsylvania has the largest domestic mushroom crops in the United States currently. There are some other ways that you can use mushrooms as well besides just fruiting mushrooms like these here. You can use mushrooms as textiles or paper, making dyes out of mushrooms or turning mushrooms into biodegradable packaging. There's also people who are doing research with turning mushrooms into housing materials and using things like reishi and other types of mycelium to build structures in foreign countries, places like Africa. On the left here is an example of mushroom leather. This is a myco brick that's been developed using an organism probably similar to Ganoderma or another type of very hard mushroom. This is Cornelia Cho from the Mushroom Club of Georgia holding a mushroom textile that, or a mushroom crochet that has been dyed using different various types of mushrooms that were found in the wild. And then this is an example of Ecovative's packaging that they have created for commercial use. I also have brought with me some examples from some of our research interns, things that they're working on. This is mushroom paper, and this has been developed using polypore mushrooms and oyster mushrooms. This is just mushrooms here. I have some other examples that I can pass around as well for folks to check out. Some are closer to the leather material. So mushrooms are not just used to eat, they can be used in a multitude of other ways. Another way that we use the mushrooms on our farm is turning them into a compost to feed our vegetable gardens. They're very beneficial for soil tilth. They also help with water capacity in the soil, and they're great for things like tomatoes, potatoes. We've had a lot of success with growing beans as well using our mushroom compost and no other additives. When it comes to mushroom growing, there are a few different steps. We've decided from our very inception at the farm to be certified naturally grown and to only grow mushrooms from spore to fruit. So all of the mushrooms that we grow start with either a wild culture of mushrooms that we found or a commercial cultivar that we will take and then clone into our laboratory and grow out onto a sawdust. Certified naturally grown basically means that we use no chemical processes inside of our grow or additional fertilizers. For our practices in particular, we just use organic grain spawn. So we use either milo, wheat, millet, rye, or oats, depending upon specific recipes for each of the substrates. And we will also talk with other farmers and work with other farmers that are part of the Certified Naturally Grown program to help register them and ensure that they are also meeting the standards for Certified Naturally Grown. So it's a peer-reviewed organization, and we'll work together with other farmers to help with their certifications as well. Mushrooms start out, like I mentioned before, with either a tissue or a spore sample from the wild, so we'll grow them out onto agar petri dishes, like this one here. And then from that point, once the plates are fully colonized, we'll then introduce them into a liquid media, which is typically a liquid culture broth, something made with either honey or malt sugars or a similar mix. Once the media has been fully colonized, we'll then take a sample from a syringe and then inject that into grain spawn, or use one of these petri dishes like I'm doing here, and drop segments of that petri dish, explants of those into the grain spawn, seal the grain spawn bags up. We use laminar flow, which is what this hood is here, and it's a positive pressure airflow that ensures that no other contaminants will outcompete the intended mycelium that you're hoping to grow. Then once we have taken our sawdust and atmospheric steam sterilized it, or pasteurized it, we will then introduce the inoculum, seal the bags, shake the bags, and allow them to colonize in another space. Once the blocks are done colonizing, we'll then introduce them into our fruiting chamber and end up with mushroom fruits like what you see at the end, those pink oyster mushrooms. This is an example of our colonization space. So here in the middle, you've got grain spawn. These are all sawdust bags here, and here as well. Each of the mushroom species sort of have their own timeline for colonization and for fruiting. Some take as little as 2 weeks to colonize a substrate, and as quick as 6 days to fruit. Others take as long as 6 months, so it really depends on the mushroom variety that you're intending to cultivate. And we plan everything based upon our demand with our chefs. So we will grow out each of these mushroom varieties independently of each other. So this is a typical mushroom farm setup. This is not our farm here, but these are some of the issues that growers might experience in trying to develop their own mushroom farm with an existing space. A lot of times there can be porous floors or wood in operation, which are not exactly suitable for mushroom cultivation, as the food of mushrooms are wood, so it's typically not a great thing for harboring other types of molds or bacteria that might be in the mix as well. So in our operation, we use plastic shelving. We also have a stainless steel 40-foot shipping container that we grow inside of, and that helps to cut down on some of those issues. They also, typically you'll see like an overhead misting system. In some mushroom farms, in ours we use ultrasonic humidification, and we also use a process for vaporized hydrogen peroxide, which ensures that our grow space is completely clean. In an area like this, it might be harder to clean because of the ceiling. That would be hard to reach. We started growing in 6x6 grow tents, and when we were in those grow tents, you would turn one direction and you would hit into a mushroom block, and all of the mushrooms would fall off the shelf. I'm about 6'2", so I'd really have to hunker down in there to make sure that I was accurately harvesting the mushrooms and packaging them without damaging them too much. So through our grant, we received this 40-foot shipping container. This is a photo of it, growing lion's mane at scale. These are opposite sides of the container, but in totality, that's probably close to around 300 to 400 pounds of lion's mane growing at the same time. These were grown in black bags. These are also pretty common, starting to be more common in the industry, and they help cut down on some of the premature pinning that mushrooms might experience. The flip side of the coin with the black bags is that it's harder to visibly see contamination, so you might be growing out your spawn and realize when you cut the bag open that it's actually contaminated. So there are some protocols that you might have to work around with using those black bags. These are some of the mushrooms we grow. Chestnut mushrooms, bear's head, which we brought today. This is actually coral tooth mushrooms. This is Sericea coraloides here, similar to, it's a cousin variety of the lion's mane, basically. 15 varieties of oysters. Some are native oysters that we found and then hybridized with other commercial cultivars. The lion's mane has been our best seller and definitely the most popular mushroom with our specific market. The king trumpet, beach mushrooms, reishi. These are some of the other locally found species. Emma with the lion's mane that we cloned, and some oyster mushrooms that were grown out by our friend Andrew at Mossy Creek. That particular variety was called the blueberry oyster, and cordyceps mushrooms as well. This was a photo that Alan took last year, Alan Rockefeller in the back. We went on a mushroom hunt together and found some of these cordyceps tenuipes and brought them back to our laboratory to clone them. That particular variety is not one that we grow to sell, but we do grow Cordyceps militaris. So through our grant, there has been a company developed called Mycologic. It's based out of the Hashbridge Incubator near Kennesaw State. And Mycologic is a software suite that it combines basically a brain. So the computer works as a brain. It manages temperature, light, CO2, humidity, and all of those sensors that are the hardware inside of the container work with this back end of the software. And if one thing is out of whack, it will usually adjust itself accordingly. We're also able to modulate anything remotely. So I can take a look inside my mushroom module even from here and change the temperature, humidity, or light by a few different parameters if needed. I've been out before off of the farm, and Emma's been at the farm, and she's asked me to change something specifically, and I've been able to modulate temperature or how much humidity is being pumped out to the mushrooms at a given time, and she's been able to do the same thing for me in other situations as well, which is really, really cool. Before, with having the grow tent set up, we were unable to modulate any of those conditions autonomously, and would have to just be there physically in person to work with any of the hardware, which poses its own set of challenges. So MycoLogic partners with growers. They provide educational and innovative technologies as well. The goal is to master sustainable mushroom cultivation. With their help, we learned everything from spawn preparation, how to prevent contaminants, and harvesting of the mushrooms. And we were gracious for them to bring us down to the Kennesaw State Bio-Innovation Lab and teach us all of these processes from spore to fruit. And that's really how we learned to grow mushrooms when we got started with this grant. So we were fortunate enough to receive their second generation prototype module called Spore 40. This is an advanced system that automatically regulates all of those parameters for the environmental conditions like I mentioned, but it also helps the mushroom farmer with labor and efficiency in cleaning protocols. It's been incredibly helpful compared to the grow tents where I was spending anywhere between 15 and 20 hours a week cleaning to now cut that down to about 2 hours a week. With MycoLogic's technology, we were able to increase our production by 300% over 2 years. The growth allowed us to effortlessly meet the rising demand that we have in our local area. We also saw a 24% increase in the average of our first flush from our mushroom blocks, which is really, really huge and very beneficial for our operation. So instead of using the mushroom blocks for 3 or 4 flushes like we used to, we were able to get almost 25% of the biological efficiency off of just the first flush that we weren't able to see otherwise, which is really huge for a small farm like ours. We also work with about 22 different restaurants now, thanks to MycoLogic and their offering. And we plan to reach out to more restaurants and continue growing. We basically maxed out the first container, and we're working on retrofitting a new container as well through MycoLogic. MycoLogic is optimized for 23 species of mushrooms. It also helps with the spawn and substrate inputs as well. So they have a profile for each of these different mushrooms and can help to better your understanding of when you need to fruit them. And on our end, we provide data, and then that data helps in using machine learning to better the software as well, which is really, really neat stuff. So this is an example of the interface for MycoLogic. So you can see on the left side, this has our humidity. This has our humidity here, and then temperature and carbon dioxide. And within the app, I can pick any of those parameters instantaneously and fill in a degree, south or north, or several, depending upon what I'm looking for. Usually the software is very streamlined, and the graphs will look just like this across the board, and any fluctuations will be able to be pinpointed using their software remotely. So these are some different mushrooms that we've grown inside of the unit. These are some shiitake mushrooms here, black pearl kings. These are lion's mane, chestnut mushrooms, golden oysters, pink oysters, blue oysters. And one of the big value adds of this software is that you can grow all of these species together at the same time. So we grow everything at 60 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, and we're very fortunate to be able to grow them all inside of this one chamber, which was pretty much impossible with our grow tent setup before. It's made it way more flexible as far as that goes. These are some common mushrooms in the southeast that we will go out and find. and then replicate in our lab. So oyster mushrooms, like Sam mentioned in the talk before, oyster mushrooms you can pretty much find any month of the year in Georgia. They are all over. They produce a white spore, and the majority of the ones that we have cloned from our local area have produced well, but not as well as a commercial cultivar on the substrate, so they don't yield necessarily as much. But some of them have really great flavor. So what we've decided to do is take some of those native cultivars and then hybridize them to a mushroom species that is a commercial cultivar, and combine the two, the native and commercial, together, and hopefully have each of the parent traits that are the best parent traits together in a new third mushroom. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes they'll take on the least great traits of either of those parent mushrooms, and you'll end up with a third mushroom that looks nothing like what you originally cloned. Morphologically, it'll look different, and it might taste different as well. That's just kind of the nature of the game of oyster hybridization. We also find a lot of reishi mushrooms. These can be grown as well on sawdust. I brought some today that I'll talk a little bit more about in a sec. These produce a reddish-brown spore print, often found on oak, maple, hemlock, and other hardwood species. In our area, we have the woolly adelgid pest, the HWA, which I know Atlanta also experiences a lot. Those have done a great decimation on the hemlock trees around our area, so we'll find a lot of the hemlock reishi, the Ganoderma tsugae, throughout the year. Lion's mane. These are some lion's mane from the farm here that were found, and then this is Emma holding some of the lion's mane that we grow as well. They get really large. Occasionally they'll get even bigger than this one here, and will get larger than your brain. So that's really cool to see how big you can grow them inside of the mycologic unit. They also have a white spore color. Typically we'll find them on oak, maple, beech, walnut, birch, or tulip poplar as well. These are some of the mushrooms that our farm has grown that chefs have turned into unique dishes. Some of the things that we are really fond of are the lion's mane crab cakes, using the lion's mane as a steak or meat substitute. This is lion's mane served with parsnips, potatoes, chanterelle mushrooms served with scallops and risotto. These are the king trumpet mushrooms here that have been utilized as a vegan scallop alternative. Pulled pork, quote unquote, but actually a oyster mushroom turned into a slow-cooked meat alternative and made into tacos. And then at the top, this one here is like a lion's mane that was served more like a halibut or a fish style preparation. This is the lion's mane crab cake, my all-time favorite here at the bottom. I've convinced many of non-mushroom lovers to try these, and have had many converts to the mushroom side of things, all through the lion's mane crab cakes here. Mushroom pizza is always a staple, mushroom soups as well. And then this was a fun one, which is the king trumpet calamari, so taking the king oyster mushroom, hollowing out the middle, and then dredging it, deep frying it, and turning it into a calamari alternative. It's always really fun to see how chefs prepare our mushrooms, as well as to go in and consult with them on specific menu items. A lot of times we'll work with chefs directly and try and create unique things as well. Some of the creations that we've made have been on menus for now 2 or 3 years, which is really cool to see as well. These are some other varieties of things that chefs have made, like a mushroom tagliolini. This is like a mushroom rice bowl dish, and cured egg with sauteed chestnut mushrooms with microgreens on top that we grew. So our farm has always been backed in institutional research. That was something that we always strived to participate in as much as we could. Some of the partnerships that we have currently are with the USDA's Specialty Blocks Crop Grant with KSU and Cornell. We're waiting on a second approval for furthering an extension with that grant. We're also working with UTK and Dr. John Munafo on lion's mane and lobster mushroom studies. We're doing invasive species research with Dr. Hill Craddock and the master student Matt Helton at UTC. And we also have 5 other interns that are from the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga that have their own projects that work out at our farm, and then 2 from Dalton State, which is our local college as well. So throughout the week we have those kids coming out at all different levels, different backgrounds, and working on their own projects, all related to mushroom cultivation, which is really neat. We also work a lot on other grants through our local community. We're finalists in the Idea Leap grant that's hosted by the Tennessee Valley Credit Union. If we win this competition, we'll be recipients of their top award, and it will help increase infrastructure at our farm. Right now, we've made it to the second to last round of that. The judges came out to our farm on Friday and did a final walkthrough, so we'll know in about a week or so if we've made it to the end of the competition, which is really cool. Then we get to go have like a Shark Tank pitch and basically pitch our business to a bunch of different local business people in our area, which is really cool. And then we're also working with the Goizetta Business School at Emory, and they're doing some research right now into feasibility and financials with our accountant as well. So our research with Kennesaw State University started in 2021, like I mentioned. Great thanks to Dr. Chris Corneliuson and Dr. Kyle Gabriel. Kyle is the brains behind MycoLogic and the Mycoto software, and Chris handles all of the business and grant writing through the KSU Bioinnovation Lab, through the Georgia Department of Agriculture, and Georgia Research Alliance as well. So this is how they started out with their prototype for MycoLogic. It started inside of their laboratory, inside of this container here, which is probably something like 6 by 3. And they had some automated equipment running in there that basically was powered by Mycoto, their software, and slowly ramped up to a 20-foot container, which was the prototype before they released the second generation, like what we have. And this is their master student at the time, Daniel, harvesting and taking some mushrooms out of their 20-foot module. Over time, they've really refined their processes and protocols with these modules up until their newest release, which is commercially available, the Spore 40. And the Spore 40 addresses a lot of the issues that the mushroom farmers have as far as cleaning goes, and with automation as well. So you can reach out to MycoLogic directly and get some more information about their offerings if you're interested in that. Their website is mycologic.solutions. So these are some of the different agricultural byproducts that we started growing during our grant with KSU. So we use wheat, peanut, hardwood sawdust, cotton gin, and spent coffee grounds. There were some really interesting findings from using those substrates, and the ag waste is just readily available. So this ag waste is sitting in bulk amounts on farms all throughout Georgia, and a lot of times farmers are willing to give you the ag waste for free, which can be assembled into a substrate and further utilized. There's also some evidence too, and this is a concern that's brought up often about crops that are sprayed with things like glyphosate or 2,4-D, other broadleaf killers and things like that. And from what we've seen, there has not been any information that the mushrooms bioabsorb or retain any of the things like glyphosate specifically. With UTK in Knoxville, we're working with Dr. John Munafo and his doctorate student, Tian Lin. Both of them focus on flavor science. So our main project is looking at lion's mane, and we're working on 14 different strains right now of lion's mane. And we've grown out all of these different commercial cultivars and several that are local cultivars as well, to try and look at some different properties within the mushrooms. Haricinones and erinacines are probably the ones you hear about most common in the mushroom world. However, that doesn't mean that these are what is responsible for the neurotropic benefit, and we're trying to establish that a little bit further. If you've heard about lion's mane having properties for anti-dementia, anti-Alzheimer's-like properties, it's not exactly known what chemical components of the mushrooms are specifically responsible for that yet, so we're hoping to delve into that a little bit further as well. But the main focus with their lab being a flavor science lab is to look at the sporadic bitterness that is associated with lion's mane mushrooms. Some of the lion's mane that we found in the wild tends to have bitter-like taste occasionally. It's not exactly known where that comes from yet, and on the cultivated side, it could be environmental conditions, it could be a multitude of other things that are happening in the process to cause those sporadic bitterness molecules in lion's mane. Similar to some of the research that they've done with plants in the past, a lot of times bitter molecules in plants can actually be more medicinal compounds. So we're trying to take a look at that to see if there's any relationship between the lion's mane that are bitter having greater or less great medicinal components as well. So they do a few different tests with this. They use SPE fractionation and start out with freeze drying the mushrooms, extracting them using the SPE, and then we'll take a look at all of those bitter molecules. They'll also use gas chromatography olfactometry, which is a fancy term that has a human assay standing at the front of the machine, actually registering and capturing this data as the molecules are broken apart from the GCMS machine. So these are some of the varieties of the lion's mane that we've started to grow from the commercial cultivars, and this is one grown out, one of the ones that we're looking at right now. This is kind of our control strain, the one we grow the most at the farm. We're also doing some research with lobster mushrooms, the Hypomyces lactiflorum, and these are a parasitic mushroom that can only be foraged as well. They're not a cultivated mushroom. They have a white spore print. They're typically found on a Russula brevites host and found in association with other conifers like pine. We often find them in pine forests. And what happens is this unaffected host, the Russula or Lactaria species, becomes engulfed by the Hypomyces fungus, and slowly over time it infects the mushroom and turns this mushroom that would not typically be a great edible mushroom into something delicious and prized culinarily by chefs. So this is sort of an advanced look at how the mushroom is fully parasitized. So some of the yucky tasting molecules called phenolics and other compounds that might taste bad, like terpenoids inside of the mushrooms, turn into lipids and fats and amino acids that become more delicious as the mushroom grows and progresses. So their hopes at UTK are to develop a mushroom-based seafood product using the lobster mushrooms. And so far they've seen some great results. They're very fortunate to have a blind taste testing lab as well, so we can partner the scientific tests with human assays as well in this. And these are some of the aroma chemistry molecules that have been found within the lobster mushroom. The sea breeze molecule down here is a novel molecule, this one. And this has not ever been found in another mushroom besides this lobster mushroom. And we found this in all of the lobster mushrooms we looked at, I think from 20 or 30 different places, which is really interesting. They believe to have found this molecule as well in other algae and other types of moss, so that it's possible and theorized that potentially the lobster mushrooms are uptaking something from the soil or from the area that they're found in, but it's only ever been found in other plants before, never in fungi. And potentially this is what gives it that seafood-like flavor that they were seeing in the study. We recently published this here. If you want to take a picture of that, you're welcome to look it up and learn some more about the article that they wrote. They co-published us on this article, which is really cool. Breaks down all of the different odorants that were found in the lobster mushrooms, and the sea breeze molecule talks a little bit more in depth about the connections there as well. We also work with the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. This is Dr. Hill Craddock, who is either the vice president or the president of the American Chestnut Foundation as well. He spent the majority of his life working with fungi and the American chestnut tree, which was wiped out from Cryphonectria parasitica, which is a blight that took over in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and decimated the American chestnut tree populations. This is our graduate student, Matthew Helton, here on the right. And Matt's project has been utilizing invasive species to grow fungi. So we started out with a variety of different substrates to try and grow on. We used wisteria, English ivy, kudzu, privet, bamboo, probably missing a few others, and then we finally settled on Bradford pear. So his project is utilizing the invasive fruitwood Pyrus kelleriana as a substrate for mushroom cultivation, and this is an experimental study in practical sustainability. So we've partnered with a local tree service and they provide us Bradford pear that has been chopped down from our area. And the southeast, there are starting to be bounties for Bradford pear, so it's invasive to the point of it needing to be removed to where the government wants to pay you money to remove it, which is really interesting. I think in South Carolina it's like $50 or $100 a tree if you'll chop it down, mill it up, and can send them a picture and proof that you've taken it off of your property. So I have a reishi mushroom block here that has been grown utilizing an invasive species, Bradford pear. I'll pass that around and check it out. It's really neat stuff. So what we've seen thus far, and this is very early on in this study, but we've seen that the control of the oak and soy or oak and wheat brand, which is what we typically use in our production, has been not as efficient at colonizing and fruiting as the Bradford pear has been, which is really, really interesting to us. So we're hoping to take it a step further, and Matt's going to be doing a variety of different testings with triterpenes and some of the compounds in the reishi mushroom to see if they are increased or decreased depending upon the substrate that they're grown on. This research will also strive to sustainably manage invasive plant species and offset management cost. So typically, invasive species are slashed and burned in the field. Sometimes they'll use a very aggressive killer as well, like a glyphosate or 2,4-D or something like that, which is harmful to the environment, has its own set of negative environmental impacts. So for us, basically what will happen is taking the Bradford pear tree, chopping it down and turning it into a wood chip pile, something like this on our farm, and then we'll take that and dehydrate it to the point of 0 water content, and then add back in a certain volume of water, which might not be necessary, but that's how we've kind of undergone the research thus far to understand the moisture content of each of the substrates. And from that point, once they're sterilized, we will add a grain spawn to them, seal them up, and let them colonize just like we would any other mushroom. From some of the tree and stump grinding services in Chattanooga, for removal of one tree, it can cost around $270 per hour. So if you're able to do this on your own, it could be very cost efficient if you're able to turn your trees into mushrooms or fungi. This might even be something that in the future you could chop down the invasives, mill them on the spot, grind them, and then inoculate them outdoors with a type of oyster mushroom or something similar, and that might really help to break down the invasives as well. We've not really taken it that far yet, but that's kind of what we're looking at. So far, the colonization rate has been quicker across the board with all of the Bradford pear than our typical oak and soy substrates. We've seen them colonize faster by about 10%, and produce fruiting bodies about 10% faster as well, which is interesting. So far, the yields have been about the same between the two substrates for the most part. We're still working on trying to harvest some of the oysters, and he's fruiting some different lion's mane right now as well. But the reishi experimentals definitely look like they're doing quite better than the controls are. These are some of the lion's mane that we fruited at our farm grown on the Bradford pear as well. We are determining if there is a fungal preference for any of these in particular right now. So this is some of Matt's research into looking at the compounds within the reishi mushroom. The Ganoderma lucidum is cultivated traditionally for medicinal teas or tinctures or extracts. It's not really a culinary mushroom. It's a little too fibrous and hard to just take a big bite of that one and chomp down on. But there are a lot of compounds within it that show promising suggestion for anti-inflammatory effects and things like that, but nothing has been scientifically proven yet. It's all mainly anecdotal evidence. So Matt's planning to use UV VIS spectrophotometry to measure total triterpene concentrations, as well as some other tests to better look at the reishi in particular. He's doing a blind taste test and culinary study with the lion's mane and the oyster mushrooms, which will be undergone this Tuesday. Actually, we're doing the test at UTC to try and see if the 50 participants on each side notice a difference when eating the mushrooms grown on the Bradford pear. From the ones that we've experimented and tested on our own, I personally could not notice the difference between the two flavor profiles of the substrates. So it'll be really interesting to see on a larger scale if anyone else has a different opinion. These are some of our current university partnerships. So we work with Kennesaw State University, Cornell University to provide data as part of our specialty crops block grant, the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga with the Invasive Species Project. Dalton State's provided us interns, and we're working on creating a mycology course for the upcoming semester at Dalton State with one of their researchers, Dr. Susan Byrne. UTK in Knoxville is the flavor studies with the lion's mane and lobster, and then Emory University for the Goizetta Business School in helping us with financial feasibility studies. Some of the things we offer at our farm are sterile lab classes and private apprenticeships. If that's something you're interested in, you can reach out to me directly. We'd love to have you up at the farm, and I could give you a crash course on specific cultivation if that's something that interests you. We also offer log inoculation workshops, cultivation workshops, and farm tours sporadically, so you can reach out to us and get on our mailing list, and we'll let you know what dates we have available. Pretty much throughout the summer, we have at least once a month a different restaurant partner of ours coming out to the farm to do a workshop. So like tomorrow morning, one of our long-term clients, Whitebird from Chattanooga, is bringing out their whole team for a culture day. We'll have them into our laboratory, teach them how to grow mushrooms, allow them to inoculate their own bags and take that home as something they can kind of watch grow and see the process from spore to fruit. We also will do mushroom forays. We work a lot with the Mushroom Club of Georgia, who's got a table set up outside. Sam Landis and Cornelia Cho, if you're not familiar with them, you should totally join the Mushroom Club of Georgia. This is my plug for them. They're a great group of people. They really treat you like a family, and everybody goes out together on walks, and they're all over the Atlanta area if you're not already a part of that. And then we do university lectures as well. So 2 weeks ago, we spoke at the Sport to Store UGA conference. We do a lecture each semester for Hill Craddock's class at UTC for the mycology students, where we'll come in, teach them how to clone mushrooms and do biopsies, and everybody will get to see that process as well from spore. This is some pictures from that cloning class. So we've had some people, like our two most recent interns, had no interest in mushrooms until we came in for the cloning class, and they found it fascinating and have really dived into the literature and started reading Paul Stamets books and have gotten fully immersed, and they've been working with us for the last 6 months or so. They have their own projects related to cultivation now at the farm, and they're really pumped up about the future of mushrooms too, which has been cool to see. We also educate children. This is my little brother on the right. But we also have homeschools, different Montessori schools, private teaching events, and children that will come out to the farm to learn more about mushrooms. If you have a homeschooling group or something like that and are interested, please reach out to us. We'd love to host the next future generation of mycologists out at our farm. We also sell grow kits too, so these are some of the varieties of different grow kits that you can find from us at the market. We're at the Chattanooga market all season long. It runs from April to December. So if you're interested in purchasing a mushroom grow kit, you can find it there or on our website. We usually offer between like 10 and 15 varieties of mushroom grow kits. We try and grow a bunch of different stuff so that you can grow your own mushrooms at home in a low-tech way. Really the only requirement for something like this is a kitchen countertop, enough area for the mushroom to get about this big, and then just a spray bottle that you can spritz the mushroom bag with once in the morning, once at night, about 2 to 3 weeks left. This is another slide about low-tech log cultivation. Is another way you can get into cultivating mushrooms at home pretty easily. You can drill holes into a log with a 5/16 drill bit, and then plug it with either sawdust or a dowel spawn. We also provide those and sell those as well. From one log, you can sometimes get like 4 to 7 years worth of life out of a single log, depending upon how good the conditions are for it. The shiitakes here were our first year of mushroom logs that we started. These are pretty large, about this big. And I think they're on year 4 now, going into year 5, and they're still producing really well. We've also grown a lot of oyster mushrooms and lion's mane on logs as well. They have a slightly different flavor profile from what we've looked at too. Also maybe higher vitamin D content because of the sunlight. They do take a while to grow. They take about 6 to 12 months to colonize once you've injected the spawn into the logs, but then they'll continue to produce. Whereas the grow kits like these here in the front will produce in about 2 to 3 weeks, but then we'll be done after find us all season long, like I mentioned, at the Chattanooga Mushroom Festival, or the Chattanooga Market. It is the last weekend of April through the last weekend of November, and then once November is over, we switch to an indoor Christmas market, which is right next to this market in downtown Chattanooga. You can find us there from 11 to 4 on Sundays if you're interested. This is our contact info if anybody wants to snag a picture of that. You can get in touch with my partner Emma. This is her direct number, and she would be happy to set up anything you would like as far as farm tours go. If you're interested in connecting with us, you can find us on Instagram or Facebook. You can reach out to us through those links. And we have our online store as well, which you can find at GowinValleyFarms.com, or you can email Emma at GowinValleyFarms.com as well. Cool. Thank you all so much.